Our speaker is named Allyson Cline. She is the senior HR consultant with VCFO. So that's used to be virtual CFO, and they are a company, I'm sure she'll explain it, that places temp, isn't it, temp to perm people in fintech kinds of jobs. You can explain it better. She's going to be talking about the HR perspective, how to prepare for the job market. And she is a senior HR consultant who is a business-focused HR professional with the proven ability to partner with executives to develop and execute strategic solutions for breakout growth. She has specialized expertise in linking business goals with modern, innovative, and common sense-based HR solutions that create a competitive advantage and drive organizational success. That sounds like the first paragraph of her resume. She received a master's degree in organizational leadership and development from St. Edward's University and received a Bachelor of Art in Criminal Justice, so shape up, from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. She also holds a certificate in conflict resolution from St. Edward's University, is a certified payroll professional, you don't find many of those around, and a senior professional in HR. She serves as a board member for the Susan G. Komen Greater Central and East Texas Affiliate Board of Directors. Let's give a very warm welcome to Allyson Cline.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I am so happy to be here, and before we get started, I want to say thank you for such a nice welcome. I also want to say thank you, Shannon. I would not be here if it was not for Shannon. She saw me speak at another engagement, and she invited me to come here to speak to each of you. So I want to share a small story. I think is your microphone on? Is it on now? Okay. I didn't click all the way. So I want to share a small story on why I'm so thankful to be here. Last week, or a week or two, Shannon sent me an email and she said, "Oh, Allyson, we need you to send us some of your information about what you're going to speak about at our meeting." I'm like, okay. And I was at a client because I'm all over town. I'm at a client every day, pretty much. And I was sitting there and I was writing, and I'm like, not thinking anything about it. And I looked at the date, and I'm like, why does that date seem familiar to me? Not thinking. I happened to go into one of my coworker's office, and we were talking, and the light bulb went off. I'm like, you've got a ticket booked to fly home to Arkansas on August 30th at 7:30 a.m. So how are you going to speak? At a speaking engagement. Oh, right. Okay. I could not call and tell Shannon, I'm sorry, I'm going home for a family weekend for a wedding, and so I changed my ticket. So when I say I am happy to be here, I am happy to be here. Because if the light bulb wouldn't have went off, I would have been on a flight on Southwest Airlines on my way to Little Rock, Arkansas. Okay? That's my life sometimes. So I am a senior HR consultant for VCFO. VCFO is a consulting firm. They help companies, small businesses that do not have an HR presence or a finance department in-house on a long-term basis, so they bring us in as fractional help. So I do not work at one particular location. I right now have 12 different clients under my guidance. That could be scary at times because I'm switching hats each time I walk into a different location. But I love what I do. HR is what I do. I chose to leave corporate America about 3.5 years ago, and consulting was my direction. I wanted the flexibility. So I had to reinvent myself. Yes, I've always been an HR person. That's all I know. I have a background in criminal justice. That's my degree, but that wasn't my passion. My passion was helping people. So I branched out. I got my first job, and here I am today, 20 years later. So you ask, why is she the person to speak about how can we find a job and how can we get past the gatekeepers, who is HR at times? And so I don't have all the answers, but I can just tell you from my perspective and what I look at, and after leading teams of recruiters for a period of time, just kind of some of the things that we've seen and some of the pitfalls that we see that job seekers have, or once you're in an interview with us, the different things that happen that you may have been at the top of the list that puts you now at the bottom of the list. So those are the things that we're going to discuss. And this is your meeting, so definitely write your questions down, and I'd love to answer them. And if I don't have the answer, I'll follow up, and I'll have no problem saying, I don't know, let me get back to you. All right? So here's our agenda. I'm like, she's given my presentation when she was doing the new hire onboarding, and I'm like, so you've got to spruce it up, chick. You know, you've got to share something different. But these are the things that we'll talk about. Staying up to speed in your industry. Highlight some of the common mistakes job seekers make. Dealing with no, resources, and of course, questions at the end. Staying up to speed in your industry. You got to stay relevant. That's the bigger thing, because the first thing that we're going to look at is what's the gap. And when I'm looking at the gap, it's not necessarily what's the gap in employment, but what's the gap where you just hadn't been engaged. So for me, if you've done a volunteer position, and that volunteer position happens to align with your skills, you no longer have a gap, because you've stayed very relevant, you've stayed involved, you've stayed connected to what it is that you enjoy doing. Network. I can't speak enough about the network, because yes, we post jobs on Indeed. Yes, we post jobs on Glassdoor. Many times, we already pretty much know who we want, or we've got an employee that's given us a referral, or we know someone also through our network who is recommending someone to us. So if you're connected in a network, you could come up in a conversation that we may be having, because we're out networking as well. Position on a board. A great place to stay connected and to fill that gap on your resume. I am a board member of Susan G. Komen. When I left corporate America, I not only was a volunteer for that program, but then I said, hey, I've got HR experience. You guys are a nonprofit. You cannot afford an HR person. So let me help you. I volunteered my services, and I became one of their executive board members, advising them on the HR side. Guess what? That now allowed me to fill my gap until I could build my book of business, because I wasn't always with VCFO. I was an independent prior to going to VCFO. So I had to keep my resume very relevant. So what if it didn't work out for me? I didn't want anyone to say, well, why does she leave a full-time corporate job and have this huge gap? First thing they're going to say, is she not a good employee? I think I'm a good employee. I had some personal things in my life that changed directions. Life happened, so I needed to do something different. So that was really good for me, and I was able to keep that on my resume, and as well as, and I keep it on my resume today, because it's a great thing, because I'm working with nonprofits, I'm working with for-profit, I'm just working all over in different industries, so it's a very relevant, because I'm still doing what I love to do, and that's HR. Get involved in your community. You can do different projects in your community that are connected to what you do, because remember, your resume should not be all of these different things that you have a hobby and you enjoy doing. It should be things, what's the focus of where you're trying to go? So get involved in your community, and there's always help that's needed in the community, and you just need to find it, because remember, looking for a job, it's not something you just do and sit behind a computer and you click the button. It's a part-time job. It's a lot of work. Join an industry-specific group and serve on a committee. And I'm just going to talk about from the HR world. We have a local chapter on the HR world. I joined a committee. I said, I'm really good at talk. I can talk about anything. I have a gift of gab. And so I'm like, I can be on that welcome committee. So then if I had a gap and I needed to fill that, I can talk about the things that I did. But when you're on a committee, guess what? Those are non-paid positions. So there's always work to be done. So I could always be doing something. I can then talk about the projects that I had completed while on that particular committee. And take some continuing education courses or get certified. You'd already mentioned that. Getting certified is key. I got all of my certifications while I was employed, because I wanted the company to pay for that, to see that they were investing in their future leader of the company. But that's a great way of filling it. So when you're sitting down having a conversation with me, and I can say, well, oh, you've had a year off. Tell me what you did during that year off. You can say, oh, I took some continuing education courses. I went and got certified in this and that. Then I can understand, because sometimes it's hard to balance a full-time position as well as go to school. So taking that time off to developing your personal development, I do not look at that as being a negative. I see that as being a positive and that you stay very relevant in the industry. Some of the common mistakes made by job seekers. This is the first one. I kind of listed it according to what will turn me off. I'm human. So if I see something, I can't get past it, I'm like, okay, they didn't take the time to look at it, so that meant they really did not want this job. Because it's very hard for an HR person to pass that on to the hiring manager if there's misspellings. Because I'm not only now trying to sell you by the piece of paper, but I'm now trying to overcome the obstacle of the misspelling and the poor grammar. Okay? A generic resume. Some people just have one resume. Not good. Because my job may be tailored to specifically what we're looking for. So if you have that generic resume and you've got your cup of coffee, you're sitting in front and watching Friends or whatever your favorite show is, and you're just on Indeed and you're just pushing buttons and pushing that same resume out, guess what? You didn't separate yourself. I posted a position for one of my companies last week, and guess how many resumes I got? I got 90. I only have one position. I got 90 resumes. Do I have time to look at 90 resumes? No. I'm just going to scheme and I'm going to look, and if I see a misspelling, oh, you just made it easy for me because I'm flipping it over. So make sure you look at the spelling. And I always say, let someone else, my husband is retired military. He doesn't know anything about a resume. He never had to put together a resume. So he's my person that looks at everything I do. Because he isn't going to just say, oh, she meant this. He's going to ask questions, well, I don't understand that. You know? And so get someone that's outside of the industry that you're looking at, someone that has nothing to do with what you're doing, and ask them to look at it. Because they're going to pick up things that other people wouldn't look at, that may overlook. So that's just my thing. A generic oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. Regarding the generic resume, so I'm a bit kind of confused about this because when you're networking and someone says, yo, send me your resume, it's different to applying specifically to positions, right? So what do you do when you're networking and someone tells you, oh, send me your resume, but it's not for a specific position?
So if you're networking, you should already, when you're talking to that individual, you should know the industry they're in.
Oh, for sure.
You should know the basics. So then just go back and look at your resume and say, okay, is my resume tailored to what they may have an interest in? Because you can go to their website and you can look and see what their openings are and see where your skills may fit, and then you tailor it a bit to fit that. So when she's looking, she's like, oh, we've got this opening that we've had for 90 days. I really need to get a feel, and I really liked her personality. She may be a good fit. Generic cover letter, absolutely the same thing. If you got a job description, you should have a very specific cover letter to match that job description that you're applying for. Because if you send me a cover letter, I'm going to look at your cover letter first, and I'll never look at your resume. Because the cover letter makes it easy for me. The resume's got dates, it's got spacing, it's got all of this. The cover letter's narrative, simplified, and it should be highlighting your most important achievements that you've ever contributed during your work history. Okay? Take a phone interview where they have bad reception. I do a lot of phone screening. We love our cell phones. Most people don't have a home phone anymore. And so when they take that phone call from me and I hear every other word, and I will say, I'll give you one hint. I'm like, we must have a bad connection. Do you want to recall me back when you've got access to a landline? Oh, no, let me just move down the hallway and I've got better reception there. I'm like, okay. And guess what happens? I'm listening, but I'm not listening because it's very difficult for me to now hear that conversation. So if you're going to use your mobile device for a phone screening call, because that phone screen is going to determine if you get in front of the in-person. So take the time and say, you know what, let me find a good location that's really good. And better yet, if you have a landline, use your landline. Libraries may still have those landlines available, so there's places that do still have them if you don't have them at home. Most of us have the bundle package, so we have the option to connect. Invest the $15 into a landline phone and let that be the place where you take your call.
Can I tell one quick funny story?
Yes.
I got a call for a phone screen that I wasn't expecting. And you know how sometimes your cell phone will go whoosh, 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 whoosh. Got the other things like, and by the way, next time you take a phone call for a job interview, don't do it from the toilet. It's so, I shouldn't hear.
It is, because just think about it. We're busy. For my one job, all the resumes I got, remember, I'm very busy, so I'm actually finding ways to eliminate you. So just write that down. I'm looking for ways to eliminate you from my pool so I can get to the top people that I want to interview with. Because I do not want to put forward someone that's going to, one, discredit my ability to find the right candidate for a business owner or for a hiring manager. Okay? They didn't practice for the interview. You got by and you came in. I start asking questions, you know nothing about the company. Woo! That's going to be a short time with me. You would probably get 30 minutes, you might get 10 minutes. I'm going to cut that interview off really, really quick. Because I will know if you don't know enough about the company that you applied for and how your skills apply to our company, then I'm just not going to waste my time because time is very valuable and I can't get it back. Okay? Or I'm going through the process and they forget the job that they applied for. I've had that happen. I'm like, really? You know, I'm like, you don't know the job you applied for it? And then I get the comment, well, I've applied for many because I haven't been working. Again, I'm human. I'm an HR person, but I am human. I'm like, I wonder why. I sent you an invite. I told you the position you're going to be interviewing for, and then you come in unprepared, and you didn't practice, and then you can't sell the skills that should be very comparable to the job that I am looking to fill. You're not going to get the next step. And if you're seeing me first, sometimes I go in the back, if you're seeing me first, I will stop the interview immediately and I will let my interviewing panel know, I am so sorry, but your time is valuable to me. I did not think the candidate was worth you seeing. I've done that. So you may get some really nice HR people, but then you get some people that have been in the industry for 20 years and we understand how important time is. Okay? Social media profiles are not professional. Many times when you apply, we're asking you permission to look at your social media profiles. And if you give me permission, I won't do it without getting permission. If you give me permission, I'm going to your LinkedIn account. I don't want to see your cheerleading picture. I'm sure you love your kids. I don't want to see your kids. I want to see a professional person that's going to represent our company. Because LinkedIn has become the online resume for you. Want it or not, that's just the way it is right now. So if I see pictures that I do not think is professional, and it doesn't have to be by a professional headshot because those are very expensive. It just has to be a nice picture that represents you and you're thinking about it. Does that look like something that I could be branded with a company with? Is that a photo that looks fine? And if you are okay with that picture, that's fine. But if you've got a picture and you're out at Hawaii on the beach having a good time, I'm going to say, I wish I was there, but not for my company. Okay? Forget that the interview starts once they step onto potential employer's property. When you step out of your car, when you've been invited, you never know who you're going to run into or interact with on your way up to that interview. Another story. Again, I interview a lot of people because that's what they bring me in to do. I was, at this time, I'm going to call myself, I was the closer. Everybody had met them and they had told me all these wonderful things about this potential new hire. So we were bringing them back for the final round. And they were going to meet with me at the end. Because now I've got to talk about salary, I've got to talk about start date, I've got to talk about all those other fun things. And so I had 2-hour block and I knew that. I said, well, I can run out and go grab lunch. On my way out, I'm from Arkansas, so I'm going to talk to any and everybody that will speak or look at me. So I spoke to the gentleman as I was getting off the elevator. He was getting on the elevator. And I said, good morning, how are you today? The gentleman took every effort in the world to ignore me. You did a pretty good job. And I'm like, again, I'm human. I'll make that statement. I called him a jack when I got in the car. I'm like, what a jack. You know, because I'm very upset because I'm like, it's so easy to say good morning back. But he didn't. And his mind could have been he's focused on his interview. It really could have been. However, you never know who you're going to run into. So then when I come back, I go up the stairs and I'm like, okay, what's the interview going on? And my receptionist, because my receptionist is always your first interview. You don't think they are, but they are, because I'm asking you to come 15 minutes early because I want to see how you're going to interact with the receptionist at the front desk. I want to see if you're going to pull out that cell phone and think you're so important. She's going to give you a ding. I want to see if you're not going to talk to her. She's going to give you a ding. You know, so I want to see what your interaction is going to be with my receptionist at that time. And so with this gentleman, when it came my time, I walk in. His face immediately turned because he knew what had happened. I'm like, oh, did we not have an encounter in the elevator? I said, I think I spoke, and I don't recall you speaking back. Because I want him to know you're not getting this job. Because if you treated me that way, imagine how you're going to treat my employees when you may be busy or preoccupied. It's very easy to be nice and to be friendly, and remember, you're always interviewing whenever you're interacting when you're unemployed, because you never know who you may run into. Again, he got a 5-minute conversation with me. I'm like, well, the team enjoyed you, but I do not think you will be the right fit for the workforce. And that was my discussion. So when they asked me for my debrief, I said, oh, my debrief is quick. I shared the story. Nobody objected because it's about the right fit. Sometimes HR, we're not looking for the skills because guess what? We are not the hiring managers. We're looking for, will this person fit into the work environment? So we're looking for something totally different. So when you interview, you're interviewing two different things. You're interviewing and selling your skills and your experiences. But then when you meet with HR, you're selling, can I fit into this work environment? Does my personality fit? So remember that when you step onto the property, you never know who you might run into. You might run into me. And then they don't ask questions during the interview. Allison, I really want this job. Please hire me. According to my skills, I fit what you're seeking. Okay, that's wonderful. But during that whole interview, because you're going to get 45 minutes with me, you're going to get 30 to 45 minutes with me. And you didn't ask me a question, and you said, oh, well, you covered everything. I didn't cover everything. I covered what I needed to cover, but I didn't cover what you need to cover because you're interviewing me as well. You should be asking me, you should have a list of things, and it shouldn't be those generic questions that you find off the internet. It should be something very specific about what you bring and how do I think it's applicable to the position now that I've had a conversation with you. That's a good question to ask. How many other candidates that that have the same qualifications as I? That's a good question to ask because now you're making me think And now when I go my debrief, I'm ranking and say, you know what? They had a different skill set than the other person, and I'm ranking them because they called that out. They really want me to know that they researched this job and here's something different about them. Okay? And they forget to relate their experience to the position during the interview. You can have a...
Actually, I had a question regarding that reception, but I didn't want to interrupt you at that time. The receptionist, like you said, you'll see whether like you're on the phone. Like, so what happens is like you interact with the receptionist, and then you basically she tells you to wait 10 minutes or whatever. So at that time, sometimes you're on your phone. Sometimes you may have a conversation, sometimes you don't.
So it's not that you're going to have the conversation the full time. It's that you're being respectful. You've spoken to her, you've greeted. But then when you're waiting for that interview, if you're pulling out your mobile phone, that means you might have something else planned. For me, that's the way I look at it. Because I will tell you, when I go into a meeting, my phone is never with me. And I think I'm really important. I think I am. I may not be, but I think I am. But I don't take my cell phone with me, you know? So
Ask is like, I'm waiting for the interview.
Correct.
I don't have anything to do. So you're saying not to use your phone?
that's somebody else, there's another HR person, she may think totally different. But if you're pulling out your cell phone, because you're only waiting 10 or 15 minutes, for me, I would love it if my receptionist said, you know what, she pulled out her resume and she just kind of overlooked preparing for her conversation with you. I'm impressed, because now you're using your time to be very productive when you get time with someone within the organization.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, but people are now using their cell phones as having that information, because like that's usually where we keep a lot of data so that we're not carrying tons of things. And for the younger generation, for millennials, that is definitely true, where they're pulling out their phones with that information on there. So I would probably have my questions that I wanted to ask that I would review that way. So that's kind of, I'm curious as to how generationally that's a different in different industries.
I can only speak for myself, and I'm working with a lot of startup companies as well. I have not one time had a person pull out their cell phone doing an interview to reference.
Not during the interview.
To prepare for the...
Yes, preparing.
And I'm going to say, if you're just looking, maybe that's fine. But if you're taking a phone call, because trust me, when I'm bringing this up, it's because it's happening. They're holding a conversation in the lobby. I'm like, really? So if you're just referencing it, I think that's fine. And especially if you have a Folio, because then she is going to be she's an HR person, essentially the first person that's working for HR. So she's sitting there and she's like, okay, they were looking at their notepad and they were on their phone. And she said, it looks like they were preparing for the interview. I'm going to be just as thrilled. Yeah. So when I'm talking about the cell phone, I want to make sure when I'm talking about the cell phone, it's not that you just have it out. It's if you're actively having a conversation and different things like that, because it happens. You take a call, it happens. And I'm like, you don't have to take that call right now. They can call you back in an hour.
Use common sense.
Yes.
And I make a suggestion on that. I would suggest you bring your notebook or notepad, which you of course take notes on, and know the questions that you're going to ask and you're going to bring into the interview. You take further notes. I would read that.
Yes. And I totally agree with that, because I don't want you to walk in without anything. Have a Folio, have a pen, and actually have the job description with you, and have a copy of your resume with you.
Oh, I'd like to add, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I just leave my cell phone in the car. I mean, an Amber Alert might go off, people might be trying to call you or ping you or
You
something.
can turn the Amber Alert off.
Common sense.
And again, I am speaking for myself, I'm speaking for my staff after 20 plus years of HR, and I'm just telling you the things that will drive me crazy during my process of interviewing. Some people may not look at that, so you may get a different type of HR person. I'm from the old school. Yes, I've converted over to where now they're calling us, you know, the culture department, they're calling us people directors. It's still HR. So I'm still looking at the traditional things because it's about the individual that we're bringing in.
I also find that when I leave it in the car and I go in and I introduce myself to the receptionist, I start asking questions. That's where I can learn a little bit more about the business. How many people are in that building, you know, how many sites they have in Austin, just things like that.
And that's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, if we could go back to questions and interviews or something, and ask, how do you feel about the appropriateness of, in a first interview, asking about salary?
If the HR person brings it up, I think it's very appropriate. But if you bring it up, again, this is from my perspective, if you bring it up, and from the feedback that I get from my colleagues and people that we talk, it's pretty much a turnoff. Because HR is going to share with you, if you've had that initial phone screening, we're going to share with you the range. And if you feel that you're within the range, some do, I see you shaking your head, some do, some don't, but we're going to share the range with you. And if you've got a good HR person, because our time is valuable, when you meet with them, they're going to start talking about, okay, what's your salary expectations? Then that's your time to have that conversation. But try to let them initiate that, because then your follow-up could be, I'd love to know what the next steps are. And then the next steps is they can continue to start having conversations about what our next steps look like, and this is the range for the position if you've got a really seasoned HR person that values their time and don't want to just talk to any and everybody that may be way above the range for the position.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? So I have been taught by several different people when in that first phone screen, one of the first 5 questions are, so, you know, what is your salary expectation? I've been taught to dodge the answer and say, well, you know, I've had a variety of salary experiences. I'd like to learn a little bit more about your culture, about your benefits, so I can come up with a, you know, right now, so I can come up with a better understanding of what the benefits package looks like and the whole compensation package looks like. And then I'm sure as we go down the road, I'll learn more of that, and I'll be better able to answer that question. And sometimes if I'm cozy with the screener, I'll say, well, can you give me an idea of what your range is? And they'll say, okay, it's 40 to 50, whatever. What's your take on it?
I'm not put off by the way you handle that. Because again, you're interviewing me as well as I'm interviewing you. So I do not want you to feel that if we move forward with your candidacy, that you feel that you were lowballed into accepting the position. Because I've automatically lost you if that be the case. So for me, if you say, I want to understand the full benefit package and what's your range, I'm going to share the range. And then if I'm within your range, then you should know the market, you should know your value, because you need to know your value. And if that range fits where you want to be, then we can continue to have that conversation. I'm not put off by that. And I think that's smart to do that. Because if you do not have a seasoned HR person, they could be looking at, I can help save on the budget and not think about what the long-term consequences are to that hire, because once you get in, employment law says that we cannot stop employees from talking about their salaries, and guess what happens at the water cooler? People start talking about their salaries, and then you feel that you came in lower than what we could have offered in that position. I've automatically lost you, because now you're looking for something else and you're not fully connected to me. Okay? Any more questions on that? Where it begins, and we've kind of covered some of these, so I'm not going to spend much time. I'm looking at the clock, making sure we stay on track. Know where you want to work or the industry. That is very important. You do not just want a job. You want to be very specific and very picky. We are going to be picky about who we hire for our one position. You should be very picky about where you send your resume to. Because if I'm a recruiter and I do have a license, I'm on Indeed, so I get to see all the resumes on Indeed. If I'm on all of LinkedIn, all of those different places, and you apply for my position, and then I go find your resume just plastered all over other places, I'm now concerned. Not saying that you can't do that. It's just be very selective of where you submit your job, because not any job is a good job. Getting the right job is the job that you enjoy, the job that you will be good at. And then the job, when you get that interview, you'll easily be able to interview with us because you're very confident in what you can bring to the table, and it's the job you sought.
The list possible job titles, as in say if you're doing you want to apply to an project coordinator or an admin role. Admin role most people can do, but like you've never had that title before, but you wanna apply to it. So do you think to put it in one or two attachments?
So this is your prep work. This is where you begin. So before you even start the job search, you're going to start doing all of this. You're going to make your own plan. Here is my plan for getting my next star job, a job that I'm going to retire out in. So then you want to list what are the possible job descriptions and job titles that I have experience that I could work in, that my experience relates to.
But like my official job titles are not those. So
And
I
that's
just
fine.
put my official job title.
On your resume, you want to put your official job titles on your resume because we're going to check that. And you want to make sure that we're verifying what you've listed. Yes. But you still can apply, and I'll use myself because I'm certified in payroll many, many years ago, and I've kept it very active. So I had many payroll jobs before I became the VP of HR. So I listed my payroll, but then all of my duties talked about HR stuff. So then companies, the one company I went to, the first thing the CFO said is, well, we got a bonus. We got someone that can run our HR department as well as our payroll department, because that's rare. Because either you got an HR person that loves HR or you got someone that loves payroll. And so they immediately pushed payroll under my umbrella. But I was applying for HR jobs. I didn't have an HR job title. So it doesn't really matter as long as the experience is relevant to the position. List possible job titles, and then know if you want to be in the nonprofit hospitality, know the industry you want to be in. Don't follow me because I'm HR. HR is HR. I just knew I wanted to do HR. But I've done everything except for oil and gas in HR. And I'm in Texas, and I haven't done oil and gas, but I've done everything else. But just know the industry you want to be in, and know if you want it to be for profit, nonprofit, if you want it to be family-owned business or not, if you want it to be a national company or global company. So really do your homework and say, where is it that I find my happiness? And then those are the jobs that you target. Okay? Assess your credentials and experience. Get your education right. I hired a VP of a large property management company. She was working for us. We used an agency that did the education. And afterwards, because we were hiring so quick, we had 75 employees and we hired over 150 people in 30 days. We were in Austin, San Antonio. I had a whole team just all over, and we were just, if you walked in, we were pretty much hiring you. And so if you could talk, you were getting a job. And so they came through, and I'm like, okay, let me go to my top people and let me do my own verification. She said she had a degree from a very well-to-do school, and I went to calling. And they're like, we don't have that person. I'm like, well, there must be a misunderstanding here. Because I went and I pulled her application, and I pulled her resume. Then I had a phone conversation with her. I said, hey, I'm just going back through and I'm doing some checks on your background. Do you have a different name that you go by? No, that's my name. I said, well, how long has that been your name? Have you been married before? Do you want to share? I said, because I seem to be having a roadblock here. She acted like nothing was wrong, and she just kept on. I'm like, oh, okay, all is good. And so I called back and I said, well, let me try a different avenue. I went to the registrar's office, I did the admissions, I did everything possible. I said, can you bring me a copy of your diploma? I got put off the whole time. And so finally, I just had a meeting. I said, well, let us schedule a call together. You know all of your information. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. And so we come to find out she had not attended. She registered, but never attended. I'm like, that's pretty bold. And then her conversation with me was, oh, that's a different resume. I gave you the wrong resume. This is the resume that I meant to give you. And you already know who I am, so you can imagine what I did with that. And I'm like, well, okay. Well, the resume that you used is the one that we got, and you cannot change out your resume. So, sorry at this time, because you falsified your application with us. We're moving on. So, your education matters, get the dates right. Some people put their GPA, I really don't care. If you got a degree, for me, that means you were disciplined to complete where you got a degree. So I'm not looking for that GPA. Some people do, and some people will ask you, but they will be very specific in their ask if they need it.
How far going back do you want us to list our jobs? 20 years?
Oh, no, because that's going to be a resume that I'm just like, ooh, this is too much information for me. I'm looking, and most job applications will say 7 to 10 years. So about 7 to 10 year time frame.
Same for a resume.
How do you handle it if your job is 20 years?
And you only have that one job you've been with?
That was the one that I got laid off from was...
I'm going to love you in different ways, but there's going to be different takes on that. Because they're going to say you've only worked for one company, but then that's where you would list your volunteer time. That's where you will list some special projects that you may have worked on outside of the company.
My question was, as you were saying, you don't list your experience past 7 to 10 years, but the job was...
But you're in that job, so that job is relevant. That's the job you want to list, because it's as of your last date of employment with that company. So it will be within that time frame.
Perhaps if you were promoted from different positions within that organization, or was it like literally the same position
Well, there was,
for 20 years?
several different job titles.
Yeah, and you're going to list that. But you still want to list that whole block of time. Right? You don't want to cut it off and say I can only put 10. That's just, you're looking at it from the last date of employment. Then you want to go a 10-year back. Okay? All right. Previous job, skills, knowledge. Don't sell yourself short. I will sell myself short all the time. Don't sell yourself short. Really go through and say, what is it that I have done? What are the skills that I have? Look at that job description. You should have your resume and that job description side by side and say, what is it that they are really saying that they're looking for? What's the profile of their ideal candidate? And then you highlight that in your skills and knowledge. Because you may have some things that's not relevant to that particular position. And you don't have to list, oh, Outlook, I'm really good. You can just say Microsoft Suites. We get it. We understand. So you don't have to put all of those different things individualized. But if you've got something that's going to separate you from the other 80 people that I get, I want you to put that there because I'm going to go look at you. Okay? Accomplishments and achievements. People fail to put this and they only talk about their duties and responsibilities, but I want to know how you made an impact to the companies that you work for. And if you can give me 1 or 2 bullets where you made an impact, you created efficiencies, you helped save them money, you brought in new softwares, you brought in new products to them, you created innovative ways for them to do their business. Buddy, I want to know that because we're in Austin, and what's the key term in Austin? Innovate. Diversity. We want all of those things. So if you can identify that within your resume, that's going to be awesome. And if you can do that for each one of your jobs, so you can tell me it wasn't just at this job that they highly performed, but it was at some of the other jobs that they performed well as well. That's going to be a positive for me. Okay? And I'm not going to bore you because Launchpad does a really good job of kind of talking through how to build your resume. I'm just going to say it's about what's the benefit to the employer. For me, that's all it's about. How will you benefit the position that I'm seeking to fill? What specialty you offer is valuable to the market. Again, we're in Austin, we're high tech, and we're always about being able to change and to adapt. So if you have those things, that's going to be a positive for me as well. Be concise. You should not just have one resume. I'm going to say, I will use myself, I will always use myself as the guinea pig. I have 7 different resumes. My resumes are not, and they're not falsified. I'm just marketing myself in a different way. Because, as my HR counterpartner can say, we can be over an administrative group. Normally that's where they fall.
So having multiple resumes for different roles, Indeed does not allow you to have multiple resumes unless you have multiple email accounts, which was suggested by Indeed representatives, making it very confusing and misleading. What do you advise if you have the experience to perform multiple roles? How do you navigate through that area?
So Indeed also allows you not to use the resume that you have saved on your account. So if you're applying to a position, you cannot use that particular resume, and you can upload a different one. And that's the way I would say you get around, because having multiple Indeed accounts, that's very administrative and taxing.
Following that strategy, what resume do you put on Indeed so you can be discovered? Or is that really valuable?
So I'm going to say that's
a two-way tool, I guess.
If you're actively looking, yes, you want to put it there, because if you were hiring like I was, where I did that 150 mad dash hire, we went to Indeed and we just pulled up people that had the experience that we were seeking. So then you can put your best generic resume out there. That's the one you put out there. The one that you say, if I could land a job, this is the resume that would match my ideal job. That's the one you post.
Gotcha. And follow up to that, bullets or written down?
Bullets for me, because I can see it quicker. If it's narrative, you're making me do some work.
So how are you going to respond when you get a resume, then you go out and look at the profile, and the resume doesn't match what you find in Indeed or in LinkedIn, because we are trying to tailor for you, but we have a generic presence out there that fits a broader stroke.
As long as your LinkedIn has the basic of what your resume is, because remember, you're not falsifying your resume, you're just enhancing it for that particular job. You're doing it almost like you would if you're applying for a state or a federal job. You're being very specific to what they're asking. I'm not going to be opposed, but if I go on your LinkedIn and none of the things that you referenced is out there, then we've got an issue, because I'm wondering, okay, what's real and what's not.
I'm assuming that things that need to be absolutely consistent would be the previous employers a date and the education a date.
That is correct.
And everything else is a little bit flexible.
It is, but I want to see, and I actually want to see where your volunteer, your community involvement, because we're in Austin, and remember, we're hiring for Austin-owned companies many times if we're in this industry, and community and involvement is a big thing. So if you've got something like that, I'd love to see those highlighted. I could care less if you've got a hobby and you love to hike and all that. I don't really care about that, but I care about the other things. So if you can keep it very standard, for me, I'm still the very standard resume. I don't care to see your picture on your resume, just not need it, because for me, I'm looking about the talent. I want your talent to be able to speak to me and say, this could be the right person for the job that I'm looking to fill.
I wanted to say something about something you said earlier, because it just struck me, because I was recently given the exact opposite advice from another hiring person. So, I mean, not that I would be saying that like she's right and you're wrong at all.
Everybody has a different outlook on
Do you
it.
mind if I share that?
I don't mind at all.
You earlier said that you people shouldn't be sitting at like in front of friends and just like hitting the apply button. Somebody recently told me, no, do exactly that. In fact, and I can see how from your point of view, you would not like that in your job. But she was like, yeah, just to get some leads. Like she literally told me, like, do a keyword search related to what you're looking for. Just literally apply to every job. You can press on a button and you post the title.
That's a different approach. That would not be my approach if I'm a job seeker. You definitely can do, everybody can do what's best for them, but if that wouldn't be my approach, because if I'm looking for a job, I'm going to spend 70% of my time at that new company. I want it to be the company that I want it to be. And if I'm going to interview, unless I've been out of the market and I really need to be able to just have a practice interview, and then I'm going to apply for something that I might get just to have that practice interview and see how well I do. But that's not the approach that I would take, because your time is valuable as well. I'd be focusing on places that I really want to say yes if they offer.
I'm sorry, let me be a little more clear. You said spend some time doing that, not most of your time. But then sometimes do it and see who gets back to you, and then like look closely and say, okay, so now I've got some spark of interest. Is this actually something I want to continue with?
That could be an approach. That can definitely be an approach.
It's a very tactful thing to say.
It doesn't matter. If you've got the right skill set, I know there's always that debate, keep it 1 page, keep it 2 pages. Now people are only staying at companies 2 to 3 years. It's almost very hard to keep it at 1 page. And if you're in Austin, you're at startups that may last a year and a half. So to be able to keep it at that, I'm not looking at that. I don't want to get a 5-page. I want it to be reasonable. And I want to see some good stability in your work history. So that's all I'm looking at, some stability in the work history.
I have a rather special case I'd like to quickly explain to you. I'm an independent business owner. I deal with big companies, and I deal with a lot of ongoing patented information, and I have to sign on a lot of non-disclosure agreements that if I open my mouth that I'm dealing with stuff that's possibly being patented. And I talk to recruiters and HR people, I say, I can only, give you a generic discussion on it. This stuff is in process, it's worth money, and, I'm trying to explain to them, and they just, when I talk about NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, I can't, because other people have released information, we've had intellectual property stolen from us, and it's a quagmire, but it's something I have to deal with as an independent, also dealing with a big company.
So what's the question? I just want to make sure.
The question is, how do you explain to recruiters and HR people that you are working on special projects that is, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and you're dealing with patented information and you just can't go out there
So many of us I sign a non-disclosure with BCFO. Many of us, that's the process of what companies are asking you now to do. But I can still be able to sell my skills that are not non-disclosed. So you can still talk about what your skills are, and you can talk about the companies that you're working with if they've given you the okay to do that. So you don't have to go into the detail, but you can be able to sell yourself and sell your skills enough that they'll understand if you make a match for what they're looking for.
Some people they want to get the details, and we've had properties.
Maybe that's where you start then going back and say, how am I presenting myself, and what is it the skills that I bring that I can summarize in a different way where they don't need to go into the detail? Because that can be the evaluation.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to confidential material, it's often the very specific things of the business. I've worked in a scientific field and worked on what's been confidential. And if you actually read the literature, nothing I worked on was confidential. It was what the business direction that business was going, and the specifics of what they were doing at that time, which was truly confidential.
Because if you're in Austin, you've signed some kind of confidentiality agreement that doesn't stop you from being able to talk about what you can do. And again, the other one is just your qualifications. Just know, and if you have a language that you speak that's other than English, highlight that, promote that, because again, you're in Austin. We want that diversity, and we want to be able to say that we have some additional people on our staff. And I kick myself because, again, I grew up in a small town in Mayflower, Arkansas. They did not teach a second language at that time, so I am trying to learn now in my car as I go back and forth to different clients. I'm finding it interesting, but I'm going to have it the next time you guys know me. I'll be able to at least communicate. Cover letters, we've already talked about that. References, know your references in advance. I've interviewed people and say, okay, give me a list of your references. You come to the interview, you should have that already prepared, right? So make sure you have a list of your references available and let your references know that you've listed them. Because the worst thing to do, and that has happened, where I reach out to a reference and they say, oh, well, yes, I know them. Yes, they held that position for me. However, then I already knew. Because I have a gift of gab. Yes, they cannot share confidential information, but they can say that what they don't say tells me enough. And if they hesitate and they get really quiet on the phone, I will say, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Because I already know what they can't say, but what they want to say. All right? LinkedIn, Facebook, to clean up your social media profiles. We've already talked about that. Preparing for your job, develop a job search plan. You need a plan. We talk about goals. You need a plan. You can't just go in it blindly and say it's going to happen, and I think this is an awesome place for that, to start developing your plan, but you need to have a plan in place on how you're going to find your next position. I just helped a friend of mine who was unemployed for 6 months, and yesterday I got an email. She said, I got the job. So we went and we had a drink. Anytime I can get a drink. We went and we had a drink, and we celebrated, but she was in that target market. She was over the age of 50. She'd only had 3 jobs in her career, and now she was looking in a market in Austin, and she was not in the high-tech industry. So it was quite slow for her to find the job, but she didn't settle because she had me saying, you don't want that job's not right, you're not going to be happy at that job. And we targeted the places that she could go, and she was so happy when she got her offer. Update your LinkedIn profiles. That's your resume. That's your online resume. Have a professional email. Some of us still have our emails from way back when, but I would love it if I see your first name, last name. How simple is that? Or even numbers behind it. But think about that, because we're looking at that. That's the first impression that I get into who you are. And professional voicemail, it would be a turnoff if I called and I get someone say, this is Allison, this is Allison, this is Allison, psych, leave a message, call me back. Really? You're job hunting. You never know who you're going to get a phone call from. And by the time I'm calling you, I'm probably calling you in my car already. So my time's very limited. And you just did all that, and I'm not talking to you. And I have been on the back end where I just start talking. Hi, my name's Allison. You applied for XYZ. And then I get that, I'm like, really? The joke's on you. I'm not calling you back. I'm not leaving a message. So have it professional, at least in the time that you're looking for a job. Okay?
My husband's big into security, and he says, do not ever put your name on your voicemail. This is so-and-so and so-and-so at, he says, just put your number.
And that's fine. Okay. If I get a number, I'm fine, because that lets me know that I called the right number. Yeah. So I'm totally fine with that. Yeah.
Like, hey, you blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
and I just get to your now.
You will not turn me off if I get that.
Okay, good.
Because you just gave me a confirmation. I'm like, okay, this is a good number.
So interestingly, I have a question about that. With all the spoof calls that are going on now, I've got a friend who's had received a spoof call, one of those crazy calls that comes in on her cell phone, or that come in on her home number. They then spoofed her home number and called her cell phone number saying her home number was calling, and it wasn't. And so they're actually taking your phone numbers when they do all these calls nowadays, the robocall type things, where they come on and go, you know, this is so-and-so, I'm on a recorded line, and then it goes click and it's gone. But they're also spoofing numbers. How do we handle that with the process of job search?
So I don't have the answer for that one. I'm just, for me, if you don't leave your name so it verifies that I've called the right number, it's very hard for me to know that I have a good number on file. But if you leave your number, it does help. So it's one of those, it's going to have to be, what is it that feels comfortable for you? But I'm just saying, if you only left your number, I'm good. And if you left your name to identify and it's professional, I'm good with that either way. Okay?
What I do with what she's saying is I do get a number of those spoof ones, and mostly sometimes I'm not on the line and I call people back, but when I do call them back and I get something like it's disconnected or some other problem, I just block that number.
We'll have to handle everybody,
And I
because,
don't have to
yeah,
deal with it, and I
yeah.
see some other times, like those long numbers, it shows you that they're calling,
Yeah.
but they're not.
But most companies, if it shows, with caller ID, you're going to see that we're calling from a company's number, because if you get a call from me, it's going to show BCFO's number. Not on your cell, if you've got a landline or if you're at someplace, well. And then keep track of what jobs you've applied to. You should know the company position. And I am going to say make a copy. If you apply to a job, make a copy of that job description. Take that job description with you to the interview or through the phone interview and highlight it. I had one person come in and they had it highlighted and they referenced everything that was related to their experience to the job that I was looking to fill. They got hired. And you know what I asked him? I said, may I please see that? And he said, yes. He said, but this is my prep for the interview. He said, because I was so excited when you called and I wanted to make sure that I made a good impression and that I could get the job. I said, you just made a good impression. I said, I just wanted to see what you were referencing because I had not one time had someone do that. So these are some basic things, but these are things people forget to do. So when they're interviewing, they're just going blindly in and just kind of interviewing that way. But definitely that could help you make sure that you stay on task. And when we ask you a question, you're making it very relevant to the position we're seeking to fill. The job description that he applied to, he had a copy of the job description. Then he went and he highlighted and he had notes that was relevant to his experience to the job that we were seeking to fill. For that interview. And this is where you're going to have multiple resumes. You're going to name them appropriately. If it's for an ops position, name it ops. If it's for a CFO position, name it CFO. So then you know the position, you know the resume that you used when you applied. So when you show up and you give the recruiter or you give the hiring person a different resume, they're going to be like, well, what's going on here? So make sure that you have it named appropriately. This is where a journal would probably help you. List all the jobs that you've applied for with the journal and the resume that you use, so then you can be using the same information, because it's about consistency for HR people. Interviewing for success, what is hard about, and these are just some questions that I put together, and all of us have experienced, and I think you guys have shared that throughout the presentation about what's hard about the interviewing process. And then these are things also that I say you need to practice on. Know what makes you nervous. Know those questions that you always seem to stumble on, because we all have those questions. And then practice in the mirror and practice talking them out loud. Use your car for a moment and then sell yourself to yourself. And it's nothing wrong with that, because then when we ask those questions, it's very fluid and you're not going in the back of your head and trying to think something up, and we're looking and saying, why are you having to think about talking about yourself? And you can sell yourself to us very easily. Okay? And I'm just going to post these. Day of the interview, arrive early. Introduce yourself. Be professional. Watch your eye contact and body language. I'm reading your body language. I really am. Bring and use your portfolio. If you have the manila folders, they're fine, but depends on the job that you're applying for. Let me finish this and I'll take your question. Bring copies of your resume. Don't go empty-handed and say, well, they have a copy, they called me. Have a copy of your resume, because I'm going to have a copy, but I'm going to ask you for your copy. All right.
I would always take 10 copies, because they run you in front of committee. Most of the people in the committee don't have one.
Correct.
So you can pass them out real quick.
That is true, but I'm definitely going to ask you for your, let me finish this and then answer the questions that, again, ask and answer my question. Don't answer the question you thought I heard. If you did not hear what I asked you or you did not understand it, ask me to repeat. Because if you go on a tangent and you answer something different than what I ask you, I'm like, okay, they have a hard time understanding the big picture and being able to articulate themselves. That's the way I'm going to perceive that. Ask questions. Do not bring up salary or benefits unless it's brought up to you. Close the interview. Thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to visit with me. I hope to hear from you about the next steps in the interview process. Again, thank you for your time. I'm making eye contact. I'm holding the hand the whole time. Because when you get up, don't just get up and grab your stuff. Most people do. Because I'm close enough for you to do this. And I'm going to remember that because now I'm really listening because you're holding my hand, you're making eye contact where I have no other choice and I can't write. You know? So you got to take away it so they remember you because that's your last impression now you have on me. And I'm going to remember that good handshake and don't give me that. I enjoy meeting with you. Remember, I'm married to a military man. I'm going to shake my hand, force me to shake your hand back and have that conversation. Because that's how I'm going to remember you. I'm going to remember my first impression. I'm going to remember my last impression. Okay? Send a thank you. Most people don't do that. We still like to get those, but don't let it be generic. Let it be specific about the time, what we discussed on our interview. Highlight an area that focused on the interview and let them know you're interested in the next steps. I close it out. Would look forward to receiving a reply back about the next steps. Very interested in the position. And check your email and voicemail. If you're going to give it to us, check it. I had one person call me back a week later. I'm like, oh, I'm so far gone in that process because they weren't checking their email. If you're looking for a job, check your email. Get back to us if we're replying to you. And dealing with the no, stay positive, keep your perspective, volunteer, and work your network. Work the heck out of your network, but find the right network, not just any network. And these are just some sites that you guys already know about, but these are some of the places. And I'm going to say when I'm looking, I'm on Indeed and LinkedIn, and that's where I probably hang out majority of my time. Googles have gotten really big, and I will use Google. It's a big thing in Austin, so get familiar with that one. But these are just some places that I thought would be helpful. And I'm married to one of these, so I could not put it up.
So what is your favorite out-of-the-box question that you would ask that you feel whatever you think about that person by the time they answer that question? But it's out of the box.
I don't have any out-of-the-box questions because all of my questions are different. Because I do not want you to prepare for my interview because you found all the questions online. So I have a script prepared. I always have something prepared, but I may never look at that based on my interactions with you and your first question, because this is the question I always start off with, and you'd be amazed at how people answer that question. Tell me a bit about yourself. And then people want to tell me about their kids. They want to tell me about their hobbies. That's not what I'm really asking you, because you're here for a job interview. We're not here having drinks to talk about your social life. I want you to tell me what is it your passion in your professional career that drives you, how you've gotten from where you started to where you are today, and why you're sitting in front of me. That's what, when I ask that question, that's what I'm asking. And then your response to that will determine how I proceed with that interview. So I'm your non-traditional, if you interview with me, it's such a non-traditional interview, but it's an interview that I will say my rates have been really good. The last company that I left at corporate, I hired all of their executives that are still there, and I've been gone for 4 years. And it's because I'm not using that traditional format. I'm getting to know the person, because I can't hire you on the technical side, because that's not my role, but I can hire you for a fit. Because sometimes I can teach you all the other things, but I can't teach you the fit. Either you have it or you don't.
So I got a two-part question. So earlier, in the beginning of your conversation, you mentioned that you post jobs on Glassdoor and Indeed, even though you have candidates in mind. So my question, the first part of it is, why do you post them if you already have candidates you're considering? And then second of all, why are the companies posting multiple postings for the same job? Because I've seen that several times as well.
Well, it's because we may have a referral, because most companies are going to have an employer referral program. And through that employee referral program, we are going to interview those applicants that we get, as long as they are closely matched to that position we're seeking to fill, because we want our employees to continue to refer employees to us. So I'm not saying that I've already filled the position, but I've already got good candidates, more likely from my internal resources.
But isn't that costing you money to post on?
No, because I might get that one that's much better than the referrals I got. And I'm still going to look at it. Because if I get that one that stands out, referral, you better bring it. Because for me, it's about the right fit. So I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just stating, make sure you're not just, make sure you're selling yourself in a way that you're going to stand out to make it where that hiring person says, we've got to bring this person in. Because I will do that. I will say, hey, I know we're at the end of our process, but this is someone that you guys got to meet. So that's the reason why we do it.
Okay, and then the multiple postings?
Multiple postings because we're trying to increase the traffic. Maybe we haven't found the right candidate that we're looking for, so we're just trying to get the traffic to increase. Yeah. And if you've applied for it more, and if you apply for my position the same, so if I've got a posting on Glassdoor, Indeed, and different places, and you've applied for it in multiple, I'm going to look at that because I'm going to say, well, they didn't know that they'd already applied for this same job as long as I haven't posted it as confidential.
I subscribe to this Work It Daily, it's an online subscription program. One of the questions that she suggests when we're closing the interview is, are there any other questions that I have left unanswered or can clarify for you to make sure that I'm not candidate for this position? I've always felt like that was a little contrived, a little pushy maybe. I like the way you closed that. What would your take be on something like that? I think
it really depends on how it's delivered, and it depends on the timing of it. And you're talking to individuals, so it also depends on my mood at that time. I'm just gonna be really. So you've got to be able to know if I'm still engaged. That may be a good one if we've had really good dialogue. But if our dialogue's been a little bit, I'm pulling and that's not the question to ask.
Going back to kind of the different type of resumes, I mean, going into an interview, one suggestion that I've been given is having a working resume, not necessarily the one that you applied for, because those are bullet points straight to the point, but this is more in detail and a little more in depth who I am. Your suggestion?
Is that for you or is that to share?
That is for me to give to you as I'm walking into the interview.
I have not had that happen.
I usually put it like in a nice little presentation, my name's at the top, I usually have a business card and say, okay, here's my working resume, which is a little more detailed. It's longer, it's 3-4 pages long.
Other HR person, you can step in on this one, but I'm just going to say for me, I'm not going to look at it. I'm probably not going to look at it. I will accept it. And if you become one of my top candidates, I might peek at it. But for the sourcing process, I'm looking at the resume you submitted.